You don't notice it right away. At first, it feels harmless. You add a sentence, you clarify a point, you give a little more context than usual. It feels polite, thoughtful, responsible. But over time, something changes. You start explaining things that never needed explaining before. You hear your own voice getting softer, longer, more careful. You catch yourself defending choices that once felt obvious. And that's usually the moment something important has already shifted. Not in you, but in the space around you. Most people assume over-explaining means insecurity. They tell themselves they've lost confidence, or clarity, or authority. But that explanation misses something deeper. Because over-explaining rarely starts with doubt. It starts with awareness. A subtle awareness that the environment has changed. That responses feel less predictable. That silence feels heavier than it used to. And without consciously deciding to, you adapt. You add words where you once added none. You justify instead of state. You manage reactions instead of expressing yourself. And you don't realize yet that you've crossed a line. Not a dramatic one, a quiet one. The line where communication stops being natural and starts being strategic. Over-explaining doesn't arrive as a problem. It arrives as consideration. You want to be understood. You want to avoid confusion. You want to be fair. So you explain a little more than necessary. At first, it feels like good communication. But then something else happens. You notice that certain statements land differently than they used to. That simple decisions invite questions. That neutral comments are met with pauses instead of agreement. Nothing overt, nothing hostile, just enough to register. So you adjust again. You add reasons, you soften conclusions, you preempt misunderstandings before they happen. And it works. The tension eases. The conversation moves forward. That reinforcement matters, because now your nervous system learns something important. Explaining keeps things smooth. And once that association forms, the habit begins to solidify. You stop waiting for confusion. You start anticipating it. You explain before anyone asks. You justify before anyone challenges. Not because you're unsure, but because you've learned that clarity alone isn't enough in this space. When people notice they're over-explaining, their first instinct is self-criticism. They assume something is wrong with them. They tell themselves they've become anxious or insecure or overly sensitive. That interpretation feels familiar. We're taught to locate problems internally, to adjust ourselves before questioning the environment. So instead of asking, why does this space require so much explanation, we ask, why can't I just be confident? But confidence isn't the absence of explanation. Confidence thrives in environments where statements are allowed to stand on their own. When those environments change, confidence doesn't disappear, it gets overridden. You don't stop knowing what you mean, you stop trusting how it will be received. That's a crucial distinction, because over-explaining isn't about lack of self-trust, it's about sensing instability. Your system picks up on inconsistency before your mind names it, and instead of withdrawing, you compensate. Over-explaining often appears in places where responses are unpredictable. Not openly negative, just inconsistent. One day your words land fine, the next day they're questioned, the next they're misinterpreted. There's no clear rule. So your system searches for safety, and safety in these moments looks like explanation. If you add enough context, enough reasoning, enough justification, maybe you can control the outcome. But that control is an illusion, because the problem isn't lack of clarity, it's lack of stability. And when stability is missing, people don't become quiet. They become careful. They start monitoring themselves. They stop speaking from impulse and start speaking from calculation. That shift takes energy, and most people don't realize how much until they're already tired. There's a moment when over-explaining stops being an option. It becomes automatic. You rehearse answers before conversations. You imagine objections before they exist. You soften positions that don't need softening. And slowly, your attention turns inward. You start watching yourself speak instead of just speaking. That self-monitoring feels like maturity, like social intelligence, but it comes with a cost. Because when you're monitoring yourself, you're not fully present. Part of you is always scanning. How did that land? Should I clarify? Should I add more? That constant scanning keeps your nervous system activated, not in panic, in vigilance. And vigilance, sustained over time, is exhausting. In healthy spaces, simplicity feels safe. You can say, "This is what I think," and stop there. But when a space stops feeling secure, simplicity starts to feel dangerous. You worry that short statements will be misread, that silence will be interpreted incorrectly, that confidence will be mistaken for arrogance. So you add buffers. You explain intentions. You clarify tone. You manage impressions. And each added word creates distance between what you mean and how you say it. Over time, you may not even remember what simplicity felt like because you've adapted so well. The cost of over-explaining isn't just fatigue, it's erosion. Erosion of trust in your own voice, erosion of spontaneity, erosion of ease. You start questioning yourself even in moments that don't require it. You replay conversations, you second-guess phrasing, you feel relief when you don't have to speak. That relief is telling. It means conversation has become work, not growth, not connection. Work. And work, when it invades every interaction, changes how you show up in the world. The moment you realize you're explaining too much isn't a personal failure, it's information. Information about the space you're in, about the dynamic you're navigating, about what your system has been quietly responding to. You don't need to fix it immediately. You don't need to confront anyone. You don't need to decide anything right away. But you do need to notice it, because healthy environments don't demand constant defense. They allow thoughts to exist without justification. And when that stops being true, your body notices long before your mind explains it. Recognizing that moment doesn't require action, it requires honesty. Honesty about how much effort it's taking just to be understood. And sometimes, that awareness alone is enough to change how you move forward, quietly, after everyone sleeps.